Mike Tyson has returned to the world of boxing after being out of the game for nearly 15 years. He has decided to fight Roy Jones Jr., who has been very active, fighting nearly 15 times in the past decade. Those numbers are crazy when you compare them to each other. Roy Jones Jr., age 51, and Mike Tyson, age 54. The question is, what gave Tyson the burst of motivation to fight since sitting out for 15 years? Could it be that he is more mentally focused than ever? Or is it due to financials, where he could just be setting himself up for a big retirement payday? A good aspect to look at is Mike Tyson may be the age of 54 and people may count him out, but he is a genetic freak and has managed to get himself in incredible shape, so I believe it is fair to say we can just call him 44 years old, knocking 10 years off his age. Not knocking Roy Jones Jr. off, but let's say Mike Tyson does come out with a victory. Where could he go from here? Could he actually compete with a top 10 ranked heavyweight fighter in today's age, such as Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Ruiz, or Anthony Joshua? Mike Tyson took a hit to his stellar career right at the end, suffering 3 losses in the last 4 bouts. Sources say that he was mentally unstable and only fought at that point because he needed a payday because he had blown through almost $300 million during the peak of his career. Mike Tyson admitted to severe drug addiction. Supposedly his mother used to give him wine and drugs to sleep better at night. He also explains that he was a full-blown drug addict and even participated in doing cocaine before professional bouts, especially towards the ending of his career. Mike Tyson definitely looks in a different state of mind as these past couple of months. Yes, his workout videos are incredible for his age, and it looks like he has lost barely any speed, if not none. The thing is, we just don't know if he is truly sober at this time. Of course, he could be smoking marijuana because he has admitted it does help with anxiety and sleep, and also being legal in many states. But as far as any other drugs, we will not know at this time. Speculations from Tyson's ESPN First Take interview with Max Kellerman asking, "Why are you fighting at this age? What is the motive behind this? You could seriously get injured at this age." Tyson replied, "Because I can do it." It does seem that he is in better state of mind than he's ever been, but why now after 15 years? Why make this comeback, potentially jeopardizing his career even further? Prior to those last 3 defeats battling the drug addiction, Tyson had only lost 2 bouts in nearly 20 years to Holyfield. Besides that, he would have had a close to a perfect resume. I think personally Tyson is trying to train harder because he admitted he does not want to get embarrassed, but he does feel like he could potentially clean up those dark last couple of years he had in boxing. After the Roy Jones Jr. fight, there's so many different options he could have available, including boxing further amateurs, battling a ranked opponent, or a super fight crossing paths with the UFC. You just have to realize this is Mike Tyson we're talking about. This guy isn't afraid of anything. There's nothing wrong with chasing the money. If you're actually going to put in the work, personally I believe Mike Tyson has paid enough dues to earn a super fight. But it's just tough to figure out his motives. Is he actually looking for competition or just multiple easy exhibitions? A lot will play out after the Roy Jones Jr. fight. It's just going to take some time. Mike Tyson may be getting ahead of himself after making a shout out to Jon Jones saying, "I'm the money fight," and Jon Jones said, "I'm listening." In a counter reply back, he stated, "We can do it in the boxing ring, but you have to promise to come to the octagon after." This could potentially happen after the Roy Jones Jr. fight. Could be one of the biggest combat sports fights up there with Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather as far as speculation and uncertainty. It just comes down to the 23-year-old age difference between the two fighters. As far as a boxing match, it could be pretty competitive. Overall, a match with Tyson and Jon Jones could be a possibility. Jon Jones has been looking for a big payday for a while and was even shot down when he requested to get paid like Deontay Wilder. That ranges around $25 million for Wilder. This fight could potentially lead to both fighters getting a bigger payday if they built up the hype enough. This could be over a $50 million payday for Jones and Tyson. Mayweather pulled upwards of 300 million when he fought Conor McGregor, and McGregor made around 100 million. I'm not saying these numbers are accurate, but they are definitely in range. I do think the match would lean towards Tyson even at his age, just because Jones still has never fought in that type of boxing environment or tempo. Tyson definitely would have the upper hand. I believe both guys have such a big impact on boxing and mixed martial arts that I do think it's time for these massive paydays to happen. They both have had bumpy roads with addiction, and they both managed to stay on top of the world in their primes. We just have to wait and see what happens after Tyson fights Roy Jones Jr., who once again has been a very active fighter, which blew my mind. Let's take a look at Tyson back in his prime boxing days. The speed and strength was always world class, but you can tell he always was a bull rusher and a very aggressive fighter. He was able to get as close as possible to you and smother you with overwhelming power shots until your body broke down. As you can see, he didn't really work the jab too often. It was usually one of his uppercuts or hook combos that finished off his opponents. Even in Tyson's current state of training, his speed is ridiculous. What kind of 50-year-old moves like that? This guy looks like a tank throwing bombs. I couldn't imagine ever having one of them land on me in the 80s. His power looks almost 90% or more from what it was, and he's definitely packed on about 20 pounds since his prime days, which may be allowing him to develop more of that power even at his age. As you can see, Jon Jones loves to attack those clinches. He is very crafty with submissions. He got Lyoto Machida in a choke here, and that was it.
We about to turn it on.
Could you imagine if Tyson was right about feeling better than he's ever felt before in 20 years? It could change everything we thought about pro athletes aging. Maybe it's a mental block that 99% of athletes can't ever break out of in their 40s and 50s. If he defeats Roy Jones Jr., then wins a super fight against Jon Jones, he could most certainly go after a top 10 heavyweight contender and compete at the highest level, but he's most likely going to have to train for a couple of months before that opportunity arrives. It's still very fun speculating about Mike Tyson's capabilities because no one truly knows the facts of where he is at. There has been athletes performing at high levels such as Vince Carter, Tom Brady, and Tiger Woods, but this is different. We're talking about fighting, which is way more violent and straining on the body. Plus, those guys are in their early 40s. Mike Tyson is pushing 55 years old, which is insane to be coming back in a contact sport such as professional boxing. Imagine if he did get the chance to compete against the heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, 6'6", 260-pound monster. Would he even have a chance? We just have to wait for all this to play out. And once again, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and stay safe. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.